Hi, I'm John Seacott, Executive Editor of the Brewer Magazine. Welcome to another edition of the Brewer Magazine podcast. We are sponsored by Keg Logistics. You can go to keglogistics.com/brewermag for more details. And of course, you can follow us right here on YouTube or Spotify. Make sure that you're clicking like and subscribe so you can keep up with the podcast every single week. And of course, daily at brewermag.com and also ciderbusiness.com. That's right. This week we are talking with some Cidery, with the Cidery, and recently we ran an article both at brewermag.com and ciderbusiness.com called Diverse Orchards, Distinct Ciders, what producers are learning, and talked about biodiversity and sustainability for orchard-based cideries. Well, Berkshire, we'll talk about that, Cider Project. Berkshire Cider Project is an urban cidery in North Adams, Massachusetts, and co-owner and general manager Kat Hand wanted to talk about their journey and what it means to operate as a B corporation as an urban cidery. And that means talking about fruit sourcing, packaging, customer storytelling, and a lot of stuff is on the table, whether you're curious about the realities of B corporation certification, or if you're a cidery looking to thrive without a traditional orchard setting. There's some great ideas Kat shared. And like I said, we talk about it. Is it Berkshire or Berkshire? We'll find out. This Brewer Mag podcast is sponsored by Keg Logistics. Now's the perfect time to review your keg management strategy. Whether you're seeking a truly flexible keg rental program or intrigued by the seamless distribution freedom of paper fill, Keg Logistics is ready to craft a personalized solution for you, ensuring you receive the kegs you need precisely when you need them. For details, visit keglogistics.com/brewermag. Keg Logistics, modern solutions for keg efficiency. And we're joined here with Kat Hand, the co-owner and general manager of Berkshire Cider Project in North Adams, Massachusetts. Kat, thanks so much for joining us here on the Brewer Magazine and Cider Business Podcast.
Thanks so much for having us. Excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I had sent out some questions like I do, and I'm sure everyone that listens to this podcast gets those emails and knows what I'm talking about, but I'll always throw out like 3 or 4 topics, 3 or 4 questions on each. And you came back and said, you know what, it was cool. I want to talk about the sustainability aspect, but we're not an orchard, we're an urban cidery. And I thought, well, that is just as important. I think there's probably just as many people like you. So that's what I wanted to talk about. But first off, you mentioned, and you guys just had your 5th anniversary. So happy anniversary. The COVID babies are growing up. It's always good to see you guys. I think we were just talking off camera about, going back to kindergarten. I mean, that's kind of, you guys grew up in the same era. You became a cidery in 2020, and to get to 5 years.
Thank you. Yeah, it's crazy how time flies. I should say, so we started in the fall of 2019, so that was our first kind of harvest year. We mark our anniversary by when we released our first cider, so that was July 2020. So we weren't intentionally a COVID business. We did start before, but whether we like it or not, that is definitely a big part of our story.
Yeah. And how was the celebration? I mean, obviously you guys get to that 5th harvest and being able to put out some releases. I mean, what did you guys get to do for the celebration?
It's a great question. When you asked me that, I was like, what did we do? Honestly, we celebrated this year by working on our blends and working in the tasting room. So we're a pretty small team. It's myself and my husband, and we've got some great bartenders. But it's kind of full on, especially in the summer months and into the fall. So we haven't had too much time to do an official celebration. We're hoping to later in the fall. But yeah, I think we were in the tasting room. Our official anniversary is the 4th of July. So it's also a particularly busy time, just, in the tasting room and beyond. So
Sure. Well, kind of getting to the subject here about sustainability. I think a lot of times, especially in the storytelling, when it comes to cider, you always hear about, farm to glass. You guys obviously are a little different than that. You're an urban cidery, but still the apples are coming from the farm and getting to your glass. So, how is your sustainability story a little bit different for any urban cidery that's, trying to educate and inspire consumers that maybe don't expect that it's the exact same thing as if you're, sitting at the orchard and seeing the apples right there?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for us, we're not orchard based. We don't manage our own supply chain. We're not growing apples. For the most part, we do have some kind of smaller orchard projects. So really kind of our sphere of operation is our production, our tasting room, and kind of our distribution. So we tend to focus really on like what we can control and impact. So again, that's a lot more about our operations, our employees. We kind of take a broad view of sustainability, so it's environmental, social, community based. Um, at the same time, we're very intentional about how we source and how we work with our suppliers. We have a big commitment to sourcing locally, and all of the kind of complications of what that means. And yeah, so for us, I mean, I think while the biggest sort of impact of what we produce is in our supply chain, at our size, I can't fund, new glass bottle development like a Miller Coors can. I'm not sitting on the orchard deciding on sort of what the practice is, but we can, from the options available, make intentional choices. And then within our operations, really work to minimize waste, use energy efficiently, and then do a lot in our community to kind of strengthen the local economy, and support local community organizations. So that's sort of where our focus tends to be.
Sure. And you kind of mentioned it, you're obviously working with a lot of different people and sourcing your apples as locally as you can. How does working with local growers, how has it helped shape what you guys even are today and, get your identity towards, being a part of that Northwestern Massachusetts area? And, how do you start those conversations and how did you get to it? And obviously, I'm sure you have people you love working with and have been able to, form real good relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a company with Berkshire on our label, and we are in the Berkshires, obviously local sourcing is really an important part of our mission. We founded our business here because we love the Berkshires and everything that means, and a big part of that is the local agricultural community. So in 2024, which was our last harvest, we were able to source 100% of our juice and fruit locally within 100 miles. And about a third of that comes from the Berkshires directly. So, and this has not been the case every year, and it may not be the case in the future. We've worked at times with orchards outside of our region, even Washington State, even bringing in juice from the UK. But we're excited about some of the partnerships we've developed over the last 5 years to really bring that kind of closer to home. And I should say it may not be that way every year because, as we know, agriculture is an inherently kind of risky thing, dependent on the weather. Things like climate change have a big impact. So for example, in 2023, we had a really late frost here in the Berkshires, into May, I believe. And it meant that a lot of our orchard partners locally had nearly 100% loss of their crop. So obviously we were not able to source as much locally as we would have wanted. So we sort of went farther afield that year. Conversely, 2024 was a bumper crop. So we had kind of our pick of anything we wanted, as close to home as possible. So we certainly prioritize sourcing locally as much as we can, but there are always factors, whether it's the type of apples that we're looking for, or just kind of the agricultural realities of that year that kind of change that a little bit.
Yeah. And I'll also, another thing that you guys pointed out, and you did a great sustainability report. We were talking about that before, where you actually like to be able to get as much wild and foraged fruit as possible into your blends as well. And how, obviously that is another part of sustainability that you can tout yourselves as, and, what are the challenges and benefits of doing that? Obviously you're doing a lot of tasting there to be able to make sure that, you're finding the right quality and doing a lot of measurements and getting the bricks. But, when it comes to quality and consistency and that, and then turning around and being able to tell that story to consumers about, this is being stuff from this farm right over here, or this apple tree that have driven past. I mean, that's got to be important a part for you guys.
Yeah, for sure. It's an important part of our cider making and part of our storytelling for sure. So I think I'm looking actually back at our sustainability report to check myself on the numbers. But I think last year, again, about a third of our apples, again, come from Berkshire orchards. And then, a little bit more than that from local orchards beyond the Berkshires. And I think about 15 to 30% on average of our total volume is from foraged apples. So that might not seem like a lot, but when you're out there gathering each apple one by one, I can guarantee you it definitely feels like quite a bit. But it's a really important part of what we do for a number of reasons. So number one, a lot of our local orchards, where a lot of our volume comes from, are growing what we would call culinary fruit. So a lot of your cider audience will understand what that means, but those tend to be apples that are great for eating, high in sugar, but not particularly high in acid, tannins, all those things that kind of make a complex cider. So we tend to supplement some of our kind of larger, quote unquote, larger batch ciders we blend to create some complexity. We do things like barrel aging, we do champagne method. So a lot of different things to kind of bring complexity to those apples. Where foraging comes in is really just creating totally different types of products. So we here in the Berkshires, we have a lot of cultural institutions that sit on huge amounts of land. So one of our great partners is Hancock Shaker Village. Anyone in the Berkshires will know them. It's a great historic site, home of the Shakers. And they sit on about 750 acres. And they have a beautiful little orchard there that when we started this project, really no one was using. So we asked if we could take those apples. And it turns out that it's a treasure trove of these like heirloom varieties, these varieties that you're not going to find in your kind of standard orchard. So again, I don't know if I would call that foraging because it is, an orchard in and of itself, but it's, we pick those apples every single year. That cider is wild fermented, and it's a beautiful, beautiful cider, really because of the quality of the apples that go into it. And it's remarkably consistent year to year, which is surprising given, the variety of the blend each year and the wild yeast. And then, we do a lot of foraging, especially for our community cider project, which is our totally kind of community sourced cider. So that brings us to backyards, roadsides, forest trails. Even one of our cider makers' favorite trees is in the Burger King parking lot here in North Adams. So we make sure to hit that one every year. And again, that cider is just like more complex and kind of varied than anything else that we make. And that's sort of by design. So a lot of our ciders we're trying to keep consistent year to year. Community is different every single year. And we think kind of tells the story of the Berkshires, the different places that we've been, the different growing conditions. So we do a little bit of everything, but the foraging and the kind of hand picking is a great way for us to connect with our community and then just create some really interesting ciders that you wouldn't get from kind of orchard grown fruit.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say, because I think when, you said we're an urban cidery, usually the immediate thought goes to we're shipping in juice and we're fermenting. And the fact that you guys can say, I picked these apples too, like you guys have, that's a selling point that brings people and your community together to understand that this is a local thing. We're bringing in, getting our hands dirty and doing this as well. I mean, how much of that is part of your messaging?
A big part. I think, again, it's what people love to hear about. And frankly, it's the best part of the fall. I mean, you can't beat fall in the Berkshires. And for your job to be going out and picking apples in all kinds of beautiful settings, I mean, it's hard to beat that. But again, it's, our community cider project in particular is something that really catches people's attention. We have a little map in our sustainability report that shows, we are up and down the county. We are meeting our customers. We're meeting kind of home gardeners. We're exploring all kinds of strange places that we might not have otherwise been. And it's really fun. It comes with some great photos that we hang in our cidery. But what's great about that project as well, so a lot of the apples that go into that are not destined for the food chain. They're either, they're certainly not farm grown. They're pretty hard to access. I mean, there's brambles and all kinds of other things in the way. And they're generally not that pretty because they're not, again, kind of managed. But as a way to kind of transform that into food for our community, we donate 20 cents for every pound of apples that goes into that cider to our local food bank, the Berkshire Food Project. So that's another way that we kind of use that project to both connect with our community and kind of give back in this unique way. So it's both an important part of our story, and we love talking about it, and it's an important part of our impact as well.
That's awesome. And as usual, I, being from a different part of the area, I said the name wrong. I'm pretty sure I put the Shire in there, but Berkshire is the name. And it's always fun, no matter how much I try to prep and I remember who uses what pronunciation of what. But I'm glad that you said it and I want to point out that, I got it wrong. But do you guys hear that a lot? Like from people, you could probably like, you're not from here.
People say it all different ways. Some people even say it Berkshire who are here. I've grown up saying Berkshire, but yeah, we take it any way you want to say it.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about the sustainability within your company and whether that's what you guys do in production, what you guys do in packaging, how you guys do your distribution processes. How do you take a step back at the beginning, be like, this is what we want to do, or how have you changed things in the time to help improve your environmental footprint?
Yeah, so again, we take a really broad view of sustainability. I should say it's probably a good time for me to mention that before I was a cider maker, before I was in this business, I actually worked in corporate sustainability. So I do have a little bit of an advantage in terms of writing sustainability reports, but it's different when you're working obviously for a large corporation, for a very small company. So again, we look at the environmental impact, we look at our local economic impact, which is really important in a rural kind of post-industrial community that we're in North Adams. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the environmental as well. So, one thing that we've done from the beginning is look at our carbon footprint. And, we've been able to track from 2021 how that has changed. Certainly not something that a lot of companies our size do, but honestly, especially at our size, it's not that difficult. We don't have that many different moving parts. But we've been able to see sort of through the years how, that overall impact has changed, and most importantly, how our intensity has changed. So we look at essentially how much carbon we're using to create every gallon of cider, to create every dollar of revenue, to see how efficiently essentially we're using our carbon and our impact. And luckily, we've seen that go down over the last 5 years. And I think that's just a function of us kind of honing in our operations and being more efficient with energy, with transportation, sourcing more locally. All of those things factor into our overall impact. And I could say that, and know that intuitively that those things are good to do. But it's great to like have that data and really be able to show that is the change. So that's something that I'm excited about, and then I'm like very happy that we're able to put out there. And then again, a lot of our focus, because we're not growing the fruit, we're not we're kind of beholden to our packaging suppliers about what is available. A lot of our focus is really on our employee practices. And we can talk about the B Corp certification and how that has really helped us kind of hone a lot of those. Yeah. And then our community impact. So again, we have a 2% giving pledge every year that we give 2% of our revenue to local nonprofits. Again, as a way to help support our local community. I mean, we're only as strong as our local community and our local economy. So we think that's really important. And then, buying locally, sourcing locally. We've talked about how that's important, both from an impact perspective, there's a lower transportation cost, but also, again, from a local economic perspective, we want our local agriculture to be really successful. So we have to support them.
Yeah. And taking a pause there, because it's so important, I think that a lot of people see B Corp and automatically assume huge company has, tons of resources to put this stuff together. And that's what I'm kind of leading into what we're going to talk about here anyway, about just the fact that, there are a lot of things that cideries are probably doing that they don't realize how close they could be to doing that. And again, you obviously have some background in this, so you would understand a little bit better, but like, is it really that hard to be able to, it might take effort and time, but like, is it really difficult for most cideries to work towards being certified B Corp? This Brewer Mag podcast is sponsored by Keg Logistics. Now's the perfect time to review your keg management strategy. Whether you're seeking a truly flexible keg rental program or intrigued by the seamless distribution freedom of paper fill, Keg Logistics is ready to craft a personalized solution for you, ensuring you receive the kegs you need precisely when you need them. For details, visit keglogistics.com/brewermag. Keg Logistics, modern solutions for keg efficiency.
Really, for me, B Corp provided a kind of roadmap and a menu of options for us to focus on. So it's a really, again, kind of broadly focused certification. It looks
Mm-hmm.
at your community impact, your employees, your customers, your environmental impact. And any one company is going to excel in one area and maybe not in another, depending on what their business looks like, depending on what they do. It is definitely a lot of work, a lot of, frankly, administrative work. A lot of it is documenting the things that you already do, measuring things that you might not have measured before, but are uh, relatively not that hard to measure. And then for us, a lot of the employee practices and policies, we have this like really detailed employee handbook that, again, I wouldn't know where to start, frankly, with a lot of these things. I wouldn't know, kind of what's important to have in there, but B Corp really gives you a lot of things to think about that probably a larger business, just by virtue of having more employees, would have kind of documented. But we were able to kind of, I think, leapfrog ahead and have a lot of those best practices at a much earlier date. So again, I think it's hard in that it takes a lot of time and kind of administrative time, but it's so flexible depending on what your business is. And for me, it was just a huge learning, particularly in that area of employees, having not been an employer before, sort of where we need to focus, what's important, and yeah, how to, put that all together.
What did you guys learn about your company in going through this process? What were some of those key things that you're like, wow, I'm glad we're doing this, or man, we really could improve here?
Yeah, again, I think the employee practices was just such a huge part of that. I mean, I've never worked in HR. I think I've taken for granted, frankly, a lot of, what I experienced in other workplaces. And I think, in this industry, and at our size, there's just not, you have so many other things to do as a business owner. Um, Things like that, I think sometimes kind of fall by the wayside. You kind of do the basics, you obviously like abide by the law, but all these kind of, putting down your mission and vision so your employees can feel a part of it, or having, um, what are your healthcare policies, or your, family and medical leave or maternity leave policies. I mean, we don't have anybody who has taken advantage of those, but now we have that in place for when we do have an employee who, um, you know, you know, needs that kind of that care. We have already decided what our policies are. So again, I probably wouldn't have gotten to a lot of those things until I needed to. Um, but now we have a lot of that documented. I think it just helps our employees feel cared for and feel like they're really part of something.
Sure.
So that's been the biggest thing. I mean, again, I do have the advantage of having a lot of familiarity with things like carbon footprint and stuff like that. So that wasn't as new to me, but I think for a lot of companies that would be a new thing to be measuring and monitoring. And the B Corp certification, again, gives you all of the tools and kind of templates you need to start doing that on your own. So they don't kind of like ask you the question and leave you to figure out how to answer it. They really give you all the tools to answer that and to start measuring those things on your own. So it's really, really helpful. And even if you don't get to, the minimum score, I think it really gives you a good roadmap on where to focus and where you can, improve to get to that certification level.
Sure. And I think, like you kind of said, having that handbook available, having those things laid out, that's able to either attract or detract certain employees. Like, you are bringing in people that, listen, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. It's not hearsay. It's not, we'll figure it out along the way. You already have it there, and people can go, this is what I want to work for, or I don't think I can do this. I mean, then at least that helps in the hiring process as well. I mean, have you seen that impact yet?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think just even having the B Corp certification indicates, we're about more than making cider. I mean, making cider is what we do, but making a business that we feel proud of and that we want people to be a part of and that gives back to our community is also what we do. We just happen to make cider while we're doing it.
Absolutely. Well, when it comes to, all the different aspects that a B Corp can do, one of them is obviously in the local community, and partnerships mean you're working with a lot of farmers and nonprofits and conservation groups, I'm sure. And, how are those collaborations been so impactful for what Berkshire Cider Project has been able to do?
Yeah, great question. So they are all impactful in their different ways. So again, on the kind of farming and foraging side, on the farming side, it's been really interesting to get to know our local orchardists and frankly, how orcharding works as a business proposition. A lot of the orchards around us are pick your own orchards. Some are more sort of production orchards, but they tend to be pretty small. And learning about sort of how those businesses operate and how we can be part of supporting them has been a big learning curve. I mean, frankly, we thought we'd start this business, we'd go to an orchard and say, hey, we need 600 gallons tomorrow, and that would be great. It turns out that's not how that works. And farmers work on a pretty small margin, so getting them to change and try something new is rightfully harder than we thought. So building those relationships, building trust, and really starting, I think at 5 years, really starting to be able to work a lot more collaboratively with them, not just kind of transaction, but to think about, maybe we want to grow some different varieties, or, how we can co-invest in new machines or equipment. That's been, for me, really rewarding. And then, all these partnerships we have with our local arts and cultural institutions. I mean, that's kind of a cornerstone of the Berkshire's economy. And we're able to work with a lot of these places, again, who have these giant properties, frankly, have a ton of apple trees already, because everyone has apple trees on their property in New England. It's been great for us, obviously, to have another source for apples, but it also kind of, for us, ties together, the agricultural side of the Berkshires, the arts and culture, and then food and beverage in this new way. So it opens up all these like programmatic opportunities. We've done a lot of educational workshops on like grafting and apple growing. And so again, it's not just a transactional opportunity with these organizations. It's really kind of a way to grow together and to tell the story of the Berkshires in kind of a new way, which is super, super fun. And then, one other thing I'll say about our community cider project, again, it frankly started pretty, forgive the pun, but organically in 2020. So when we started in July of 2020, it was in the midst of COVID. Folks were stuck at home, And it also happened to be a huge year for apples in the Berkshires.
Mm.
And so I think a lot of people were looking around at, again, the apple trees that are on everybody's properties. And there were just so many apples. They didn't know what to do with them. So people started bringing us their apples at our cidery, being like, do you want these? Can you do something with this? I can't make any more pies. um, and so that's sort of how that project started. And then as that's grown and as we've tied that to, this giving pledge to our to Berkshire Food Project, and we've kind of grown our partnerships there, it's been really fun to see just how that's evolved. And one thing we're always very careful about with our community cider project, we're taking fruit from trees that don't belong to us. In a lot of cases don't really belong to anybody. They're on, public lands, or they're, again, on like parking lots. But nonetheless, we know that, there are animals that rely on this fruit. In many cases, there are people who rely on this fruit. So we're very careful not to take, more than we need. We're not taking every apple off of these trees. That has also been another learning as we've gone on. I think at the beginning we were kind of greedy and wanted to take everything that we could, but we really learned and have taken to heart that, we're not the only ones who have use for this fruit and these apples. So that's been another way that that's kind of evolved, and I think brought me a deeper understanding of, sort of what apples mean in our community, and it's more than, just us making cider.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I was going to actually ask about that, because like I think sometimes people are interested in, like how much is too much. And understanding, like you said, that that there's others that are using those apples for other means as well. So it's cool that you guys were able to come to that conclusion and be able to go forward with it. Let's talk about working with the farmers and the things like that, where you guys have your standards. Do you work with them on their standards? Have you not worked with someone because you just didn't like the environmental practices, or is there things like that you guys have learned along the way to kind of streamline your process?
Yeah, so again, a lot of the orchards that we're working with locally are small. Here in the Berkshires, it's not like in a lot of places in New York State or Michigan where you have these giant production orchards.
Right.
They're by and large family owned, they're small operations, which for me kind of inherently means that the growing practices are going to be a little bit more kind of hands-on and low intervention than, again, an orchard that's maybe shipping apples all over the world.
Sure.
So as I said, we, at our scale, at least till this point, our buying power with these orchards are not to the level that we can sort of demand they do something differently.
Sure.
And I don't also think that's our approach, to demand things of people. But we've really gotten to understand and gotten to know them and trust that we know what they're doing. It's not like high spray pesticides and things like that. And I think we're getting to the point now where we will be able to, maybe kind of separate off like a block of trees that maybe are even lower intervention, or we can top work some trees for the types of varieties that we want. But it's really about building trust over years, that we're going to be here buying apples, and that we're good partners to get to that point. It's not kind of like a switch that you throw. And I think also inherently, like sourcing locally, again, we could buy apple juice from China, apple juice concentrate from China, and it would be here tomorrow. And frankly, my life would be a lot easier. But but that's not what we do. It's not why we're doing this. We often say we're always trying to answer the question of what it means to make cider in the Berkshires, and obviously a big part of that is sourcing locally. So I think we've already kind of decided we're not sourcing from a certain type of orchard. We're not shipping in concentrate. We're focused on local farmers. And I think, again, as we grow, I think there's just going to be more opportunities to partner with those farmers. We've also been talking to some about, a lot of them, if they're pressing cider, they're pressing fresh cider for their own farm store. They're, pressing, I don't know, 60 gallons a week. That's what they need. That's the size of press they have. And that works great for them. But, again, we need 300, 600 gallons at a time. So, maybe we co-invest with them in a larger press that, uh, helps us grow our partnership together. But I think it's a lot of like, really, we've been understanding what their business model is, how we can fit into that, and building that trust and relationships that's gotten us to this point that I think we can explore a lot of those things.
That's awesome. Well, let's look forward. What's the areas of your business that you still see improvement, needs to improve, wants to improve, and how do you see that going forward, especially on the environmental aspects that you want to get better?
Yeah. So we're definitely looking into growth in the future. These first 5 years, neither my husband or I come from this industry, so we've kind of looked at these as our graduate studies in cider making. Kind of really making sure that we know how to make cider at the scale. People like it. We like making it. And having answered all of those questions affirmatively, we're now kind of looking to grow, to kind of right size the business for what it needs to be. And so again, that will take a lot more supply. And so a big part of that growth will be working with our local farmers and seeing how we can increase that supply. Again, a lot of that probably will have to do with increasing their ability to press juice. So that's a big part of sort of what we're looking at. And then, right now we're in a really great space in the Berkshires. It's a former converted mill building that we rent a space in. But we've quickly outgrown it. So we're kind of thinking about, how we can expand our tasting room, expand our production. And certainly as we do that, we'll be looking at, how to be even more efficient with our use of energy, our use of water. Again, we built this 5 years ago, having relatively little knowledge of what we were doing, and we know a lot more now, so we can make it even more efficient and effective. And I also think there's a lot of interesting stuff coming out in the packaging world. So we're always keeping tabs on those kinds of things. If it makes sense for us to change to a different type of packaging that has lower impact, that keeps the quality, we're always open to that. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to grow and have more positive impact. But we can't do everything. So it's always about kind of focusing in on what we can do.
Well, it's been a great conversation about sustainability, about B Corp, about what you guys are doing in Northwest Massachusetts with cider and apples. But I always like to end things a little less serious, a little more fun. Let's get to know Kat herself, and let's talk a little bit about your thoughts on some of these things. I did not give you these questions ahead of time because it's more fun that way for
Okay.
me. If your cidery style was a music genre, what would it be and why?
I think it would be like a um, classical cover of a pop song, which I feel like is very popular these days.
Okay.
So we make a cider that is much more akin to a wine. So we're 100% dry. Everything's in wine bottles. So it has the appearance of being maybe more sophisticated, and hopefully not off-putting. But I think sometimes the wine bottle can intimidate people. But we really try and take ourselves not that seriously. We try and make cider really fun. Our whole goal is to get more people to drink cider, so we want to make it really accessible to everyone who comes in. And we have really fun, bright, exciting labels. So we try and, I don't know, bridge the gap between the two. We take our cider making seriously, but we try not to take ourselves too seriously. So yeah, that would be my answer.
Awesome. How about if you could have any fictional character be your assistant for the day, whether it's in production or just day-to-day operations, who would you want to have be your assistant for a day?
This is a very niche local answer, but we have
Okay.
a local, like very, very minor league baseball team here in the Berkshires
Yep.
called the Steeple Cats. And their mascot, I honestly can't even remember his real name. We always call him Steeply. But there's like a mascot costume. He's always at these like very community local games. So I think we'd love to have him in our tasting room. I think that'd be really fun.
That's an opportunity right there. That brings in a whole
Yeah.
different audience as well. That
Yeah, actually,
you
that
can
is a
make
good
that
marketing
happen.
opportunity. I'm gonna put a pin in that.
There you go. All right, last one. This one is just about you. Which reality TV show do you think you could win, and why would you be winning that reality show?
Ooh. So the one that I want to win is Wheel of Fortune. Uh, we during the pandemic, I think, everyone was looking for something comforting and routine, and we really got into watching Wheel of Fortune every evening. And
Nice.
I've become kind of obsessed with getting on that game show and winning a cruise from Ryan Seacrest. So I don't know. I don't actually don't know how good I will be because it's a baffling game sometimes, but I'm pretty good at board game.
Are you good at word puzzles in general? Like, are you a crossword puzzle person in the car when you're, old school, either on the phone or with a pen and paper?
I am. I do my Wordle every morning, and
Yeah.
I can do the crossword, the New York Times crossword, like Monday through Wednesday for sure, and then struggle through the rest of the week.
Speaking of Wordle, it's Wednesday, August 13th for those that are watching right now. So was that one of the hardest words you've seen in a while? Or did you know it?
I I couldn't believe that that was the word.
Same.
I was like, no way, this is the word. It's like so, yeah. Yeah, it was
I have
pretty
to
hard.
look it up again. I'm trying to remember what it was. I mean, we're not spoiling it for anyone. It was Kiefer.
Yes.
Yeah, I got stumped on it and I was all over the place. I went with shite, 8, which I realized after that the H and the T were there. Eerie. I tried Eerie because I thought the E's were just going to, like I couldn't find a place
Yeah.
for an E. And Relic was my last guess. And usually I'll get it wrong maybe once or twice a month.
Yeah.
And my wife got it in 4 today. I think my mother-in-law got it in 3. I was just like, I didn't like, I had to look the word up. It's just one of those. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I learned something today.
Yeah. No, that was a tough one. I will say cider was one of the wordles over the last year, and that was like a very exciting day.
I think the foam, I think was foams, foamy. I think foamy
Foamy,
was
yeah.
one that I think the Brewers Association even like posted about it the next day or something like that. So it is fun. Like, I think a lot of people got into Wordle years ago when it first started and it's kind of died down, but it's always fun to find another person that plays Wordle and is like playing it all the time. And like, I don't care about the streak as much as just something to do every day to get your brain going. That, and then I came across on LinkedIn a game called Zip, and it's literally
Ooh.
just a little maze game that you like draw yourself. Like it's like a, I don't know, 10 by 10 grid, and it has different numbers on it, and you just have to connect the numbers in the right order and fill all the gaps. Just
Ooh, okay, I'm gonna look that one up.
stuff to make your brain move in the morning,
Yeah. Yeah, we could
So
all use a little bit of that these days.
well, Kat, it's been great talking to you about puzzles and about sustainability and about cider. We always appreciate having cideries here on the Brewer Magazine podcast, since we have the Cider Business Magazine as well. So we appreciate you taking the time and sharing with us.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And yeah, look forward to talking to you again soon.
This Brewer Mag podcast is sponsored by Keg Logistics. Now is the perfect time to review your keg management strategy. Whether you're seeking a truly flexible keg rental program or intrigued by the seamless distribution freedom of paper fill, Keg Logistics is ready to craft a personalized solution for you, ensuring you receive the kegs you need precisely when you need them. For details, visit keglogistics.com/brewermag. Keg Logistics, modern solutions for keg efficiency.